Okay, for today's lab, we will cover the rest of the axial skeleton, and then we will get into the appendicular skeleton. For this first narration, we will be doing the sacrum, the coccyx, and the bony thorax, so your first page on the word bank. So to get to these views, go to your Human Anatomy Atlas. I would just click on full skeleton. It's the easiest, and then we don't want to see all of these ligaments, so you can go to systems, and then click on ligaments. It'll take the ligaments away so that you're only seeing bones, and then click on systems again to get that little pop-up to go away. The first bones we're going to look at is the sacrum, so turn your skeleton around. You can click on the sacrum, and then what I like to do is go up here and click on isolate mode, and that will take everything away except for the sacrum. And then you can double click it so that it'll zoom in on it quickly. So if you look at the sacrum, you can see there are these kind of spines on the back. The sacrum is actually 5 or more fused vertebrae. And so if you remember the spinous processes on the vertebrae, and these are the remnants of the spinous processes of those fused vertebrae. And if you see, you can kind of see how this looks like a lumbar vertebrae right here. So, the first thing we'll look at is the base. The base is actually the top. Okay, right here, this is the base. And you can kind of think of it because the base of the spinal column sits right here on the sacrum. And then the apex is a point, so the apex is down here on the bottom. Okay, you have the wings or the ala, okay, on the side, okay, right here. These are like the transverse processes. The body is just the main portion of the sacrum. What we can do, I can color code it, so you can click on your details. I'll pull this up in color. So the body is everything in this lime green. It's the main portion of the sacrum. You have your superior articular processes, just like with the vertebrae. Okay, superior means on top. Articular means that they articulate with another bone. So this is where the sacrum articulates with that 5th lumbar vertebrae. And then you have your anterior posterior sacral foramina. A foramen is a hole. Okay, so these are just the holes. This is the posterior side because here are those, the spine, the sacral spine. And so this is the posterior side. Just remember the spinous processes of your vertebrae. You can feel those on your back. So here are the posterior sacral foramina, okay, the holes on the back. And then here are the anterior, the holes on the front. Okay, it's the same thing, but it depends on which way you're looking at it as to how you name it. Okay, the sacral canal. Remember we had the vertebral foramen, okay, the hole where the spinal cord went through the vertebrae. Hey, we have this sacral canal because you actually have the end of the spinal cord extend down into the sacral canal. And it's really not the spinal cord, but we'll get to that when we talk about the nervous system. We'll talk about the cauda equina. It's where the end of the spinal cord kind of continues. Okay. The auricular surfaces. So auricle means ear. Okay, so these are the auricular surfaces because they kind of look like an ear. This is where the sacrum articulates with your pelvis, with your pelvic bones, okay, right here. And, okay, I think that's it for the sacrum. So to get back, you can just hit exit. And then we want to look at the coccyx, so we are just going to go out of that isolate mode. Click OK. And then here's the coccyx. It's just the tailbone. It articulates superiorly with the sacrum. There's not a whole lot to the coccyx. It's 3 to 5 fused vertebrae. It's pretty easy to break this if you land too hard on your tush. Okay, so now we will go back. Okay, I refreshed to get back to the original view, so I need to take the ligaments off again. Okay, we are going to look at the bony thorax. We're going to look at the sternum first. And the sternum is your breastbone. Right here, to me, it looks like a nice little suit tie. So the first part of the little suit tie is the top knot. Okay, so that is called your manubrium. Okay, so that's the top portion of the sternum. On the manubrium, you have some, double click to zoom in, you have some features that you'll need to know. You have on each side, on the top, you have these clavicular notches. Okay, this is where the clavicle, this is your clavicle right here, your collarbone, that's where it articulates with your sternum. Okay, it articulates right here at the manubrium, at the clavicular notch. Then right here at the top, let's color code this. Hey, you have your jugular notch, and you can feel this if you just run your finger down the front of your throat. Your finger kind of gets caught in this little notch. That's your jugular notch. And then you have your sternal angle. So we're going to exit here. Your sternal angle is right here between your manubrium and the body. Okay, the body is the tie part of the suit tie. Looks like a little fancy skeleton with his tie on. So right here, this is the sternal angle. Okay, so the sternal angle, let me go back up. The sternal angle is an important landmark. So you can see there's a nice little angle here because the manubrium and the body aren't a nice straight line. You can actually feel this sternal angle. And that's important for those of you that are going into nursing school or radiology school. Okay, then you have your xiphoid process. It's just this little bone down at the bottom of the gladiolus. The xiphoid process is actually not completely ossified until around age 40. It means it's not fully made of bone until age 40. Before that, it's mostly cartilage. The xiphoid process, you do have to be careful when you're performing CPR on someone. A good way to know where to place your hands when you're doing CPR is to just go right between the nipples. If you go too low, you can actually push on the xiphoid process. You can break it off and shove it into some important organs, and so that's kind of a precaution you need to take when you're doing CPR on someone. Okay, so now we're going to go to the ribs. We'll zoom back out a little bit. So you have 12 pairs of ribs. You have 24 ribs. The first 7 pairs, these are called your true ribs or your vertebrosternal ribs. And they're called this because they're attached to the vertebrae here. And they come around and attach to cartilage that has a direct attachment to the sternum. So they articulate with the vertebrae and the sternum in the front. Now let me show you this real quick. When we were talking about the vertebrae, this is kind of what I wanted you to look at. You see the ribs actually kind of straddle 2 vertebrae. Okay, so it articulates with the inferior costal facet here and the superior costal facet here. Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted you to see when we were talking about the vertebrae. Okay. So pairs 1 through 7 are vertebrosternal, articulate with the vertebrae and the sternum. And then if you go down, pairs 8 through 10, so 8, 9, and 10, are called vertebrochondral ribs. Chondral means cartilage, so all of these vertebrae articulate with, all of these ribs articulate with your thoracic vertebrae. Okay, so they articulate with the vertebrae. And then instead of attaching to cartilage, like on rib 7, that has a direct attachment to the sternum, these attach to cartilage that all come together and then attach to cartilage that attaches to the sternum. Hopefully that makes sense. So they attach to the vertebrae and then only to cartilage. And then that cartilage attaches to more cartilage that then attaches to the sternum. So these are called your false ribs. Okay, your vertebrochondral ribs. And then you have pairs 11 and 12. Okay, these two on the bottom, these are your floating ribs, which makes sense because they don't have any attachment to the sternum or to this cartilage. They're just kind of floating there. Okay, so that's it for your the rest of your axial skeleton, and we will stop this recording and get started on the appendicular skeleton.